We're good? Good.
I'm Greg Simmons.
Jamie Henriksen,
Matthew Velkovich.
Mike Derelia.
Debbie Cloninger.
Tom Audette.
Christy Cox.
Brandon Guffey.
Allison Wood.
And Robert Weaver.
Joel's on vacation, and I think Bump is at work, so.
Both of them.
Oh, is he?
He's at a conference.
So, I think, there's no script for this, but I think I'm happy to open it up to hear from you all as to what you are seeing with the implementation of the recode. And are there things that you think council needs to hear, some frustrations that you are seeing, some concerns that you are seeing, and then, we'll let council share some information. We could also do it vice versa. Does anybody have any preference? Does anybody want to speak? You ready to go? Are y'all ready to go?
I think they don't hear any recourse from recode. I think that would come through Jonathan or one of us. So I think once
We don't really see.
they don't get any feedback once it's passed. Once they've passed it and made their recommendation to us, they don't see or hear any more of it.
Will they implement it?
Well, Matt may, just because of being in his position.
I think you guys are implementing the new code, and so if you're seeing some things that you think, that you're frustrated with, I think that's the point, is to hear, is there a gap? Is there something that you're seeing repeatedly come before you that's a concern that you think is not covered?
So far with the new code, it hasn't really caused issues. Mike, you were talking about something last night that we could add. I don't know if that's something you or not. I don't know if you want to bring that up or.
I can. Tell me specifically, because you and I talked about 3 or 4 different
Yes.
things, so narrow that down for me a little bit.
With the rezoning, specifically, we were talking about the Nichols
Okay, so
rezoning.
last
Yeah.
night we had something come before us for Nichols Store wanting to expand, and they had bought some property next door, and they had a nice little plan of a new office building and more parking, because parking's becoming a problem for them. And they were zoned NC currently. And NC does not permit vehicle sales. They have ATVs and they have little golf carts that they're selling. So part of it was to rezone all of that to GC. Well, GC opens it up to a whole bunch of other potential uses down the road versus just what they're doing now. So some of the struggle we have is, we have this comprehensive plan and the future land use map. And how much of that should be looked at as law and Bible to not be deviated from, and how much of it is, well, this is a general idea of what we want this to look like, but there could be exceptions. And then when you have a small business that's been there since, 20, 30 years, 1968, I think is when he said the first one was, right? So we're kind of in a position that we either go all or nothing. We either have to tell them, okay, GC, so you can do what you want to do, but then let's say 5 years down the road, they decide to sell that. They decide to get out of it altogether. The next generation comes along and they say, we just don't want this business anymore, and they sell it. Well, now that it's owned GC, whoever comes in next could do all kinds of stuff that we may not have wanted there, but we had to give them the GC classification so they could do what they're doing now. So
This is based on the interpretation of golf carts being a vehicle.
Right.
it
And
really,
that's the wrong interpretation of
It
vehicle.
comes down to technicalities like that, but it really is that in a lot of that, we use this as an example to say, there's a lot of times where we have to either choose this or this, and there is no gray shaded area in between that we can work through to say, you know what, we want to put an exception in place to let you do this. And one of the notes I wrote down is, if we do that, then once we've put that little exception in place for them to do whatever we think is right for what they're asking because of a technicality like this, that should someone come along and want to do something different on that property than what's been approved, they now have to go through the whole process again. They would have to go through the whole review, that it would not be something that could allow an opening for somebody to do something that's permitted because we were forced to choose from only the two options. I'm not sure if I've articulated that well, but that's
I think
one of the
our
things that
common
frustrates
problem.
us
I think that's our
regularly
common
with
problem
it.
as a
Yeah.
whole.
Right, so the
Because
code
there
does
may be
not
somebody you
allow
want to
us.
be able to help out, and it makes sense. You're
Right.
just worried about the future
Right.
use of it.
So right now, there's no way for us to say, okay, in, GC, which is just, one up from, one or two zonings up, it's a close zoning, could we just take this one use and make that an exception? Our hands are tied, we can't make the exception to allow that use, and ZBA can't make a use exception, so he can't go before the ZBA to get that use exception, he can't come to us to get that use exception. We recommended unanimously, I'm pretty sure it was unanimous, to go ahead and switch it to GC. I mean, it's a business that's been there forever.
And been selling golf carts forever and
Right.
not had an
Yeah.
issue. The issue was more with parking, but.
They were
With
fixing a
parking,
lot of
right.
things, and the only thing that was really out of line was just going.
The golf carts and ATVs.
Yeah, well,
Right.
but just
But golf
in
carts
the
and
bigger
ATVs
picture.
should be considered small engine or outdoor power.
Right, but they are considered vehicles, so in order to let him keep it, we said, yeah. We would do, but we would much rather be able to take that use from GC and make it an exception so that he doesn't have to go through the whole rezoning process. If 10 years down the road, they sell it, somebody else buys it, they can't turn it into a hotel.
I
So
know
are you-
in the past 8 years, we've done some rezonings with those conditions on them, but that's harder on staff because when it sells in the future, then staff's gotta go remember that.
Well, we specifically
that's the
asked,
only
can we
condition
make
there.
that exception? And they said, you cannot make a use exception, period, and ZBA cannot either. So there was no relief
council?
other than
We
rezoning.
have in the
No,
past.
but we had, right,
So you guys might be able to, but
Right.
they told us we were not able to do so.
So I think that's good, but, and just in terms of like taking notes and figuring out, that was a limitation that you had. And whether or not council goes back and takes a look at independently, whether there's a four of us who thinks that should fall into a different category, the definition of that, or how to approach that.
Or
I mean,
just
I
putting
think-
something in the code that allows us to take, not something general commercial into AGC. I mean, those are completely opposite
Right.
zonings, but something within one or two zoning districts up or down, to be able to take that use and make it an exception.
So you want to allow common sense in law.
Exactly, which is difficult.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I said last
And
night when we were talking, is they don't allow
It
us to use
absolutely
common
is a
sense.
challenge
Yeah.
because once you've done that, if the rules of how you do that aren't clearly defined, who's to say the next person will say, well, you let them do this, why can't I do this, right? So it is difficult to get the language and the structure around that, but that is something that we struggle with, is you either get it all or you don't get anything, and those are the only choices we have.
Having conditional uses and rezonings with use, specific use conditions would fix a lot of that. And there's a lot of municipalities in this region that do that.
And
It's not all of them, but it is some of them. I mean, to your comment, I mean, if they can do it in Charlotte,
We've
they can do it
done
here.
it in the last 8 years, but it's been very sparing, and staff has not appreciated us doing it, but we've done it.
I hesitate to talk, but if I could, we don't think state law has any provision to allow that. That's staff's position, and I think, our conversations with legal have been fairly consistent on that lately. So, we can explore that, but I don't think there's anything in state law that allows you to put additional conditions on what, over and above what our zoning code allow, or take things out. It's just not, we have done some of that in the past, but I don't think our current code allows that. I don't think state law allows that, but that's our position.
What would be the devil's advocate reason for why would the state be opposed to that?
Well, I don't know that they're opposed to it, but they give you some options. You have your zoning code that you can follow, your table of uses, and I'll ask staff to correct me if I'm wrong here, but you have your table of uses. State law has a provision for a special exception, like we do with venues and stuff like that they can come before the board specifically and request a special exception if you list those out. Similarly, there are conditional uses, and that is you can have a car wash if you do A, B, and C. and all that's stipulated in the code. There's no provision, as far as I know, in state law that allows you to say, well, we know you can't have vehicle sales in this district, well, we're gonna carve that out and allow you to have it in that district by vote of council. I don't.
Could we not write it as to say, you know, in this situation, if you say that it is for a hunting supply store and other items related thereto?
You can
So
certainly write
you're
your
leaving it
code.
gray, so whatever you're selling an ATV that is for hunting, you know, they're not out there selling, jacked up golf carts with stereos in them, so to say, but they're selling hunting accessories.
What I'm hearing is a rigidity in interpretation and maybe not an intent of what council included. I think that's a bigger question. But I think the point has been made. I mean, I know like even with the chicken ordinance that was done, the interpretation now is that that includes all birds, so even quail. If you have 6 quail, that's going to, and that's complaint driven. I think that's a little bit more rigid than what council intended when they passed that. And so how do we effectuate some changes there? But what I did hear from staff on some other questions related to the same category of issue is, right now, we have to have our zoning code have enough flexibility in it to do lots of different things. And so right now, for instance, we have 5 acres zoning with AGC that allows 2 units to the 5 acres, or we have 1-to-1 under RUD. We don't have anything in between, so it's 1-to-1 or RUD. And so how do we have to build that into it? And so I guess just to guide the discussion, I don't want to dictate this, but I do want to hear, are you seeing any patterns of concerns? Are there any repeated things that you're showing where you feel like the code is inflexible as it's written to allow for something that you think accomplishes the land use plan and the goals that council will set? And that's kind of the question. I'm looking to you all to say, y'all are seeing this. Are you seeing any patterns or any consistent issues? Because it'd be difficult to do an itemized request, but.
Wouldn't that be more of a Jonathan, Diane, and Josh question?
Well, I mean, I think they're the one. I guess I'll pose the question to y'all. Do y'all see anything with that? Because you're the ones who are dealing with it from the planning commission side. And if
I would
not,
say nothing specifically
Okay.
coming again and again and again that we're running into, other than inflexibility with certain issues. You know, we feel like our hands are tied, especially when it comes to like preliminary plats. You have to approve it no matter what. And sometimes it's just they're horrible for where they're located. And I think that's probably one of our biggest complaints. Is that you're told you have to vote yes, period, you have no say, no choice, regardless of if it's seriously damaging to the area that they're trying to put it in. No choice, no flexibility. The schools have no say, you know, EMS has no say. You know, they wanted to put hundreds of homes on a 2-lane road where the firehouse is here. You have an elementary school here and a middle school here. It's a 2-lane road that dead ends into another 2-lane road. You don't need to put hundreds of houses right there. You're just causing a huge nightmare. We denied it. That one happened to be a rezoning, so we were able to deny it. But if that came to us zoning by right, you approve it even though you know you're gonna cause a huge problem for that firehouse and both of those schools.
Well,
You don't have a choice.
We did
You
have
approve
one of
it.
those last night.
Yeah, we did.
We had one where, hang on, I think I've got it with you.
Could we
It was
not?
the senior living.
Yeah, that was a rezoning.
That was a
No, it was the Cato,
Yeah.
Cato,
right?
yeah.
Cato, there was the,
It
no,
was a
that was,
PD amendment.
that's the.
Cato
PD
actually made it a
amendment.
little bit better because I got rid of a couple houses.
That was that, no, which one was it then? It was, but we had a development that was gonna, oh, I know what it was near Clover. And there was gonna be a development, and the land's already zoned for that development, so there was no TIA before you went forward, there was no educational impact, what's it gonna do to the schools before you went forward, because that plat can be put out there, because it's already zoned that way. So
When
we're
did we
basically rubber
When did we
stamping
start
it.
asking schools before we make an approval?
think we've always done that since I've been on council.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that up until recently.
We've always solicited that.
Planning.
That's only for
Always asked that.
rezonings, not for
Planning.
preliminary plats.
Yeah.
Because plats aren't automatic approval.
Yeah.
And that's what
But
I'm saying.
rezonings
when it-
aren't an automatic,
When
so
the
that
plat
the schools
comes,
can-
it's just stamped, so there's no, then it goes forward, and then you finally get to the point where there's a school review, and the school says, wait a minute, I don't, if you're really gonna bring that many in, we might need some more funds to do this or that. And now, well, wait a minute, you approved our plat, and now you're telling us that we got a problem with school support, so it's
Gotcha.
putting that a little bit sooner in the process.
Putting the cart in front of the horse on that
To
one,
help,
absolutely.
yeah, because if preliminary plat approval, we're just always gonna approve, why bring it before us?
Yeah.
Then let staff do that and take us
Yeah.
out of it. But if you want us to have some questioning of what they plan to do and how well have they thought that out, and,
Right.
okay, you're gonna add these other houses, but have you looked at what it's gonna do to the schools? Have you looked at what it's gonna do to the roads?
Right.
Do you need to be looking at expanding the roads before you even break ground trying to put another 140 homes here, right?
Exactly.
So some of those things, we're not able to ask until we're already this deep into the new
Yeah,
development.
If I remember right, didn't the consultant and staff recommend that we not have preliminary plats before planning commission? That y'all be able to do that, but we wouldn't agree to that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and we wanted to keep it as well, because there were a couple of issues in the last couple of years where we were able to make some changes to the preliminary plats, recommend some changes, make a couple of changes that benefited.
Yeah.
And the developers agreed to it, so if
And-
it comes
and that-
before us, we still have a little bit of control, but we can't do it.
Right. But that, but from a, and again, I think this goes back to, conversations we had in regards to how government and the public will look at an opportunity, right, from a developmental standpoint. If these kind of tweaks will help in the long run with our developers, okay, and from a partnership, because a lot of times, like I said, they'll get their plot approved, or they'll start moving the process forward under the assumption that they're going to be looking to do this. So it does skew their development process by favoring them too much up front, unless we're not really, honest with them, the fact that really everything hasn't been evaluated, and that should be something that we really should look at mitigating. I think it's a very good one, absolutely.
Any other, before I turn to council to kind of talk, give them an opportunity, everybody, to share, kind of their vision and their ideas when passing either the comp plans, or that's our job, is to eventually pass them. Are there any consistent issues that you are seeing that you think are limitations on being able to accomplish the goal of quality development in the county? Are you seeing anything?
I think one of the things
And we can
that-
circle back, but.
One of the things I've seen is, a couple of years ago, you went through the process of increasing all the lot sizes, the minimum lot sizes. And then with Recode, they came right back in and introduced the small lot as a zone. And it just, kind of undid everything that was done. And we've had rezoning requests come in for, just what's basically considered the most intense residential zoning.
I'm jotting down these notes as we go so that we can circle back and.
I think one thing that would be important would be to determine how much negotiation the planning commission has when a developer comes before you. Because, I'm like a step above that sometimes, not above, but a step ahead of that sometimes. In District 2, where the developers come to me and they say, we'd like to get your blessing on this. And at that point, I have an opportunity to say, well, and maybe they've got two plans, and I'm able to say, well, I like this one, or I like this one better than this, and just negotiate some with them. I mean, I think a great example of that was Mattamy Homes in Lake Crest, where I'd just gotten on council, and they came to me, and my request was that they go ahead and put in dark sky lighting, because I was going to be proposing that ordinance, and they did that. And that's one of the most, that's one of the biggest blessings we have with that development, was that they paid attention. And then Cypress Point followed suit with that. So we ended up with almost lakefront communities with dark sky lighting a year and a half ahead of an ordinance passing. So, but that was simply me saying, hey, this is what I would like for you to do. They had no, they were not obliged to me to do anything at that point, because they were about right. They could have done whatever they wanted to do. And I think it would be great. I think we have a great planning commission. I think y'all work well together, and I do pay attention to those meetings, and I think y'all work great together. And I think you are all somewhat very different, the opposite of what we've had in the past, where we had developers and surveyors and well diggers on there who were all pro development, and and maybe some of that was back in the day when we felt like we needed more development. But I can tell you that in my area, we certainly do not need more development. And so I'm thankful that y'all all have the mindset of what can we do to make these developments better and smaller, and in the long run, something that's going to be good for York County in general. So, my thoughts would be that, everybody on council tries to put the best person they possibly can in a position like yours. I feel like, my appointee, Jamie, and anybody in that large seat, and anybody that I look at as a member of the Finance and Operations Committee, is that I want to put the best person I possibly can, because I feel like you are an extension of me. I don't share the philosophy with some people who, hey, we're going to just put this person on there and we're going to let them do their job. And so that's why this meeting is so important, because I think y'all need to hear from us. You need to hear what our goals are, and we need to hear what problems you're having. And I don't think once a year is frankly enough for us to do that. So we'd like to do this a little more often. But would love for you to be able to negotiate the best possible thing for York County when those developers are in front of you. And you are more of a gatekeeper than we are when it comes to that. So the person coming to me, I really have no say. All I can do is ask them. You really are in a much better negotiating position than an individual council member. And unless it's a rezoning, and then it's finally coming to us in the end anyway, and we can approve it or not approve it as a whole. But I would love for the county to tell us and to tell you what can you negotiate with the people. I mean, are you able to say, well, we like this part of your plan and we don't like this part, and maybe there's a little back and forth, and maybe they don't get their approval that night, maybe it comes back, maybe there's an extra meeting in there somewhere for them. But to me, that's how we accomplish the mission of ultimately everybody in this room on behalf of the people who live in the county. So that would be a priority for me. And let's just talk about Nickel Store for 1 second. We've asked the zoning committee, that's Brandon and Bump and myself, we've asked the zoning, as the zoning committee, we have asked staff to let us know if something repeatedly comes up, hopefully to catch the things that Christy's trying to find out from you tonight. But when I hear this about the conditional use and for Nickel Store, for example, and if we have the language in there of vehicle, well, it seems like a very simple ordinance change. Of course, I know it's like when I tell my jeweler, "Oh, that's simple. You can do it." It's some major thing, but it does seem like a simple change because it's semantics. And maybe we say maybe it changes, and we're not talking about vehicles anymore. We've got something that separates an RTV or a recreational vehicle that can be interpreted as a golf cart versus a Volkswagen.
We have some. It's not our taxes. You pay a higher tax on those items than you do on a regular vehicle.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about in the verbiage of that ordinance that says, hey, you know what, that you can't sell vehicles, you can't have a used car lot out here, you can't put 3 or 4 cars out here on the weekend, Darren, but because this is a recreational vehicle or an ATV or something, that is allowed now. So that to me seems like, when this first comes up, it comes to staff way before it comes to y'all. So at that point, I can't help but think we've had a zoning committee meeting since we've had a bunch of them, and I can't help but think that, hey, maybe we could have caught this earlier on in that net and said, hey, Nickel Store, I think that's a store that everybody in York County appreciates being here. We like those local businesses like that, and we want those people to be in business, and I'd rather them sell a golf cart than somebody in Charlotte sell a golf cart. So, but at some point, when are we proactive to the point that we can say, hey, this is coming up, so zoning committee, this is an example of something that maybe we need to look at, and maybe we could already be a little further along in fixing this. that one problem. Instead of, now we're looking at, we're reacting to something that maybe we could have been proactive, so,
I agree.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying about being proactive and reactive, and our argument's always been that proactive, reactive, but exactly what you said is exactly the way I feel. I feel it should be reactive. Like, we see this is a problem with Nichols, let's go ahead and change this ordinance now. Why are we waiting? Why are we making them jump through hoops? If that's what needs to be done, take it off.
Right.
How many other people is it really gonna affect, whether we got vehicle sales on there or not?
but you can't do things on a one-on-one basis. You've gotta do things across the board, across the county. So if this is a problem,
Well, that's whenever we have the discussion,
yeah.
to kind of look to see who else is this gonna affect.
But I'm saying that the planning staff could have said, hey, you know, what could we do that would make some sense with this, because, I mean, somebody used the word rigid. Well, okay, so this comes to the planning commission and their hands are tied, but your hands aren't tied. Because you can come to the zoning committee and say, hey, we got this coming up, let's be proactive. And gosh, this is one thing, but maybe we have a long list of agenda items of things that, you know, let's tweak this. I believe that Recode, you know, we left that window open to change things in Recode because we felt like, you know, there were things were gonna come up that we weren't aware of, because nobody could go through this book, I mean, like, and catch every little thing. And we've caught some very valid things that needed to be changed and updated. But there are more, and there are a lot more. And it's not right for us to say, well, you know, y'all catch it, and then we'll have another meeting like this in a year, and then they'll tell us what those things are. I mean, I want it caught in a net before it gets to y'all. And I'm not saying we're gonna fix everything, because that's not what we're here for. We're not here to fix every problem that everybody's got. But I think that little store and the golf carts is an example of one where we could be proactive, we could fix that, and we could have fixed that before he ever got to planning commission for something.
Right.
Because now what you've done is not a bad thing, you don't even have a choice. But now what you've done is you have you've given a fix that's this wide when it could have been this wide. And I have a problem with that too. And I think the people that live down there would be concerned that, hey, what can this be? You know, we're always looking at, when we rezone this, what else could it be? And you don't want some of those things.
Well,
So-
if you limited it to the recreational vehicle on there, that would include if he's gonna sell a duck boat, whether he's gonna sell an ATV, I mean, it doesn't matter, it's based on how the state is taxing it to begin, or how we're taxing
But
it.
that's something you guys have to change.
Yeah, but we
in
could
the
just
code,
change
'cause
that
They won't
language
let us
just
do that.
on that one particular
Yeah.
ordinance, just to allow
Right.
that. And then
But-
would it really affect anybody else? I mean, I'm not gonna start selling duck boats
Right.
at a rock yard,
I'm
you know?
thinking about it though.
There you go.
So as I'm taking notes, and what I think, you know, one of the things that I've always learned in good meetings is that you gotta cap the time, because it can go on and on. And so I don't mean to cut people off, but I do want us to have the expectation that we'll spend an hour here, and then afterwards, and anybody can talk to whoever they want to. But what I heard you all say, and some feedback from you all is at least council being aware of the fact that preliminary plat stage, you feel like you don't have any discretion at all, that you're basically told you have to approve it, and that's an issue that I think that council has to determine. Is therefore for folks who want to take that issue up and try to drill down on that. Increasing the minimum lot sizes, undoing the other things that we have done, and trying to control basically what I understood. And Michael Johnson said it best. He said, what we're trying to do is to limit the tract builders who come in and build just for private and leave, and then they don't stand there behind their product. That was the impetus behind the high density reductions, and how do we make sure that we protect our small builders and the folks that are gonna stay here to build quality product, but avoid the tract building where they leave, and then you've got problem developments. And so that seems to be an issue that council needs to take a look at. The only other one that I know I'm aware of right now is you guys are going through a very big thing right now, which is a comprehensive plan. And we have some lively discussion about that on council, but the comprehensive plan basically is what drives what we do. Whether you like it or not, it's very, very important. And you guys are the first step through that. And I hope that you are being very active. You know, I know that at least Allison had, you know, served on the comprehensive planning group before she came on council. And I think she'll admit she didn't realize how important that is when it comes to later on decisions, because it's basically supposed to govern, where do you want industry? Where do you want your homes? How do you, the big picture items, making sure that's consistent, that allows business and growth, but that also is considerate of the neighborhoods. And so I hope that you all we're dependent on y'all to take the first crack at this and to spend a lot of time drilling down on it and looking at it in each of your districts. And we are not going to dictate anything, because that's not our job, but you are the first step towards that. And so I think that lends itself to council having, their vision for what they see for their areas. If anybody wants to, individually, I want to make sure council has an opportunity to be heard about how that process works, because that, whether you like it or not, that's how the zoning process works. That's how state law is. You do your comprehensive plan, you decide where your urban services boundary is, where you're gonna, put your infrastructure and your water and sewer and your electrical, and then beyond that, you plan for what should it look like in the future.
So, but real quick on that,
I'm gonna let you doing that, but I think we gotta gauge.
So you wanna
I'm
do
not
it-
a fan of the comp plan. That's the
I
reason
know
I
that.
shrug my shoulders.
You wanna
You can say that.
have us talk for our own districts? Is
I
that
think
what
so.
you
I mean, I think one of the things that I
You
heard
definitely.
in having this meeting was that council wanted to at least express,
Yes.
what their vision is when they did this, so that you could hear it.
Well-
And you have your own point of view, but at least you hear it and there's dialogue happening.
yeah, real quick though, before we get started, I just want to mention something and it was a point that you brought up, and I think it's a very good point, is that, when staff gets these requests, there's identified issues from within there prior to going to y'all. From an agile environment, I think that we can create some type of program in order to push those issues over from staff over to your committee prior to even having to touch you guys. Because this is where I see where we go off the rails, is because when we have something like this happen, we end up going the different direction. We get out of what we're looking at for long-range planning, and we put them in we'll push them towards a zoning code that's really not gonna fit for the long range. So that's huge. In the second part of it is that not one shoe fits all, right? For my district and for Allison's district, high density growth is crushing us. So we've worked hard to mitigate that, to try to bring in business into our area. I think having that alignment from the structure of getting to having those developers come up front, having those discussions to direct them in what we feel from our strategic plan will help mitigate the pressure that you guys feel in the stuff that's coming to you all, if it comes to us first, and then we can then identify where our vision is from what we want from within our district. So again, just want to get those points out.
I think it's the most important thing that we have, honestly. Our zoning committee right now, in my opinion, works perfect. Me and Allison are usually on the opposite ends, and Bump's usually right in the middle, so we've got a wide variety of opinions, but we all work together and we seem to come to a solution, and it works great. So I think the most important thing going forward with council is to ensure that we've got a wide variety of opinions. It's put before zoning. We're being very reactive. As soon as something comes up, we're getting it right before council. We're moving very fast, as fast as government can possibly move. But I believe that is what is most important, having, these zoning meetings consistently. And we said that we were gonna be agile during the recode. I think that the county going forward should be consistently that way. I don't believe it should just be through the recode. As we see these issues, we work for the citizens of York County. And whenever they've got an issue, we need to jump on it and we need to try to solve it. Ensure we're not affecting other people within the county, but ensuring we're doing whatever we can to help them at the same time.
It's
And
a good.
I think the way, just in terms of process, making sure that we have this open dialogue is supposed to generate, awareness of some things that maybe we don't see. But yes, I do think the way that it typically works on council is you can't just go run off and start fixing problems yourself, because then you got craziness. We at least need to have 4 council members say, that's a big enough issue, I want you to deal with it in the committee. And so I think this is why this is important. We need to make sure that we are devoting, because there's only so much time you have in the day. Believe me, I've got 3 kids and I totally run out of time from the things that we want to do. But I guess that's the only point to that, is how do we funnel the efforts? And so I'm glad that we're opening the discussion, as ugly as it may be, for the first time. But I think what might help is just to at least, I think the comp plan is we're not dictating anything to you all, but vision and, setting the stage before. I'm gonna let each council member have the floor to, here's your opportunity to share your vision or your comments, and if you want to, and I'm gonna, end with the same for you guys, and please let us know, because the ultimate goal, I think we all are here to do the same thing. All right, Robert, you wanna go?
I'll be short. For me, of course, District 3 is mostly what's left of the rural part of the county. And
I got some.
the city of York, yeah, there's a little bit, this is mostly what's left, but there's a little bit in Leslie and a little bit on the, well, I would say the western side of District 2, but that's all in District 3 now. So. We still need some growth over there. We still need, good growth, good housing and stuff, and that's where, for me, we've got to look at that, and, we need, one of the things I try to run on, and it's hard in District 3 to get the jobs over there, because Interstate 77 is on the other side of the county, and it's, most everybody, including my wife's employer, which I recused myself from all those votes when they came through, but we offered some big tax incentives to her to put that Lazy Boy distribution center that's on, I say to her employer, not her personally, but that Lazy Boy distribution center that's on River Road over in East York Industrial Park. But for them, to being right there 2 minutes off the interstate when they're delivering furniture to homes all over North Carolina, South Carolina, and Central Georgia, it was even though that was a big financial offer to give them a much lower tax incentive and all that, in the long run of 20 or 30 years of doing deliveries out to these homes and stuff, it was much cheaper for them to pay more for the land and be 2 minutes off the interstate so they can get those deliveries done quicker and get more furniture out and get more checks in from the customers. And unfortunately, in District 3, that's what we fight against all the time when it comes to the employers. And so I say that, sooner or later they're gonna run out of land along Interstate 77, then they gotta go somewhere. But the other thing is just the number of people who are available for work. I mean, commuting is a bigger thing now than it was with gas as high as it is and after COVID and people staying home. But I think we could get more employers in the western side of the county if we had a few more people in the western side of the county to work. So it's kind of a catch-22. We need some more, but we don't need what Fort Mill and Lake Wiley have. And unfortunately, the city of York is going for that right now because they've approved 2,700 homes in the city limits of York in the last 18 months. And more coming. So for me, it's a hard thing in this district because we do need some growth, but we don't need the overwhelming, 55-foot wide lots that are like behind my house right now, 60 acres and 152 homes on 60 acres. 65-foot wide lots, but it's in the city. We don't need that kind of growth in District 3. Probably could argue we might not need that kind of growth anywhere, but we need to maintain the rural side but still get some good growth, and that's why I like trying to look at the local builders that are doing more 1 acre, 5 acre, mini farm type things over there instead of the ones that are putting 5 acres or 5 homes on every acre, and then like you say, leaving town. So what we can do to try to help that local builder stay in the community and doing what they're doing, I think is a big deal for us. As far as the comp plan, strategic plan, it is a guideline, I believe. It's called a plan. It's not called the law. The speed limit is not called a plan. That's the limit, that's the law. I think the strategic plan, the comp plan, is a very good guideline, but I think sometimes when it gets down to specific individual situations or zoning or businesses, we gotta use a little common sense in there sometimes. So yes, that might not be what we thought, but we do this plan for 25 years, 5, 6 years from now, we might not have even thought about what this business is that they're thinking about, and if we just are rigid with that plan, then I think we're doing a disservice. So I think it's a guideline in the way I think of it, it's a plan, it's not the law. And this comment is for staff, and I say this lovingly because I think we've got a great staff, and I try to tell y'all that as often as I can. I get a lot of good feedback, but the one biggest negative I can say for staff is, I heard it said earlier, the citizens are our customers. And probably the biggest thing I hear a negative from people want to talk to them about our planning and zoning staff is the answer, if they're coming to y'all and needing to do something, the answer is no. Not the answer is no, but I see what you're trying to do, maybe this would work. And I would love it if I could hear that a little more often from our citizens, that, you know, think about, they're our customers, they're the ones that pay our salary, so if there's a way, when they bring something to us, and we know that what we understand kind of what they're trying to do, but the zoning doesn't allow it, or this doesn't allow it, if there's a way we could just say, no, you can't do that in this zone, or no, you can't do that here, but maybe you could look at it this way and see what this does, at least give them an option of something. You know, I spent 25 years in retail, and Allison could talk to it, you know, I think she spent more time than that with it over the years, but, you know, one of the biggest things that aggravates people is just to be told no, with no other explanation, no other, just no, you can't do that. If there's a way we could work on that, I would really appreciate that from staff. You know, and for me, other than that, I thank y'all for what you do. As was said earlier, you know, we get paid a little bit for what we do. Y'all get paid nothing for what y'all do, and y'all still do it. So thank you for it. Y'all, as Christy said many times, y'all are the front line to implement all the headaches that we give you. So we appreciate you doing that and working through it. And again, really, the front line is staff first, because we change all this and tell you, and then y'all got to do it, and you got to filter it through. But I know your job's not easy, and yours is not either, because there's 7 of us, and like Brandon said, when we work the best, a lot of times, in my opinion, is when the 7 of us don't agree. Maybe not as bad as sometimes, but you know, if we were all sitting up here of the same frame of mind on everything, there'd be no reason for us here. It'd be kind of like y'all with preliminary plats, you know.
Yeah, 6 of us could do
Yeah, if you just, you know, gotta approve everything anyway, if we're just gonna approve everything that comes for us and agree on everything, there's no reason for us to be having meetings. So, you know, we all have different opinions and different ideas of what we want. That's what makes it hard for us to govern as a council, because all of our districts are different, the different parts of the county are different, and we have to try to implement that, and then, you know, put the rules in, and y'all enforce them as much as you can in your position too. So I appreciate that. I'm much more, one, because it hasn't hit me as hard yet, so I'm not as big on, you know, exactly what I want in my district, other than, you know, I like the idea of trying to see more 1 to 5 acre or larger, you know, that type of development, which is pretty much got to be done in most of my district, because there's no water and sewer in most of my district, there's no USB. But for me, that's it. You know, I'm not as big on something we did with Recode as far as required green space in some things, because when you got 5 acres on each parcel, and we've got, you know, 15 parcels out there's green space built into that. So to require a developer to put in a gazebo that somebody's got to maintain for some green space or something is not as big a deal for me. But again, y'all have no control over that, because that's the Recode part. Y'all just got to enforce what we said. But that's my general, and I'll shut up because we've got about 10 minutes for everybody else to talk.
Okay.
All right, got 2 minutes.
Okay.
Start the timer.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
I got 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Robert said he can go short, so I can
Yeah,
have your
that
next
was-
one.
Robert started off by saying, I'm gonna be brief.
That was brief right there. You should let him when he really goes for it. Yeah, that's it.
So, we'll give you a little history of District 2 real quick. District 2 includes Lake Wiley and Clover, two very different, just two very different areas. And in 2008, everybody must have been scared to death that another house was never going to be built and that we were done in York County, because whatever we have is what we were going to have. So in hopes of having growth in an area that wasn't booming like it has been for the past 10 years, in 2008, there was an agreement signed down on the Dangler parcel that required, there's some difference of opinion here, but required about 3,700 homes to be built there. And so what happens when you get something like that approved, it's coming, and I'm going to tell you, it's coming. And what happens in the meantime is you have people on council, and maybe those people, maybe an individual council member is not even aware of everything going on in their district, or maybe they live on the Lake Wiley side and they're not aware of what's going on in Clover, or they live in Clover and they're not aware of really what's happening in Lake Wiley. But the cumulative effect of the rezonings that took place in Lake Wiley, where you've got this one over here that's been approved, but you don't see any signs of it yet, 3,700 homes right there. We brought that down a little bit because the terrain's not good. But believe me, if they could build them all, they would build those and more. And then you got another approval for, 800 homes here, 300, 200, 500. But you're not seeing anything. You've just got developers who have come in, gotten a preliminary, and they're not even, in some cases, they're not even developers. They're land holding companies. So they've come in, they've gotten a preliminary plat approved for all of these homes, and nobody's aware of it. And all of a sudden, they start popping up all over the place. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, who allowed this? What are all these houses being built? And now you've got, in the bottleneck of York County, more houses than should ever be there. If we were if we were a ship, we would have already sunk. So the problem that I inherited is a whole lot of homes in the pipeline. Since I've been on council, we have not approved, don't send them to us, we've not approved a single rezoning for higher density in Lake Wiley. And I'm not planning to going forward, because we've got enough. We've still got those 3,700 homes. It's going to be, I don't know, how many is that going to be, Diane, now down there?
Much fewer than that.
Yeah. So let's say half of that. Okay. Still, that's still a lot of homes. Okay. So we've still got that. We've still got, a few other developments. We've still got developers knocking on the doors of property owners on big parcels of land, trying to purchase their land. And I did serve on the Comprehensive Land Use Committee for 18 months. It took us 18 months to look at everything. And when you're sitting on the Planning Commission, just like I was sitting on that Comprehensive Land Use Committee, you're only familiar with your area. And that's why I've asked for this meeting for so long, because unless you've driven through Lake Wiley, unless you've driven to Sharon, my God, I went to a meeting and I thought I'd never get home because I've never been to Sharon before. I've been there, but not Sharon. Sharon. Yeah. Right. So if you don't know the area, you gotta kind of listen to the person that's from that area. And in Lake Wiley, there's something else that's very important that you take into consideration, and that is the overlay. Because when I tell you that you are an extension, if I appoint you, you're an extension of me. What I have worked hardest on in my district is the Lake Wiley overlay. Because there are a lot of things that are unique to Lake Wiley. There are a lot of problems that are unique to Lake Wiley. I believe that these problems will spread and are spreading throughout the county. So, it's important to me that I blaze that trail and put things in effect that hopefully and probably one day other council members are gonna want. Fort Mill is very different than Lake Wiley. So you can't say, hey, we got Fort Mill and Lake Wiley and they're similar. We don't have an interstate we don't have an interstate in Lake Wiley. And we got a 3-mile strip from a bridge to the main intersection in Lake Wiley. And if there's a wreck, guess what? There's nowhere you sit for hours. every day. It's every day. So, because there's no shopping centers to cut through, there's no little side roads to cut through and work your way around. So what I would ask of the planning commission is take a ride out to some different areas. But go out to Lake Wiley, about 4:30 any afternoon.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom would come to the council meetings, he'd come through from Fort Mill to Lake Wiley to get to a council meeting, and every day I was like,
I run a helicopter.
is he gonna make it? So we're a unique area. And the comp plan, I mean, that concerns me because, you know, people are making decisions on comp plan when, you know, do you know all the different areas that you're talking about, that you're making decisions for? You know, even we as council members, listen, I'm not familiar with District 5. I'm more familiar with Roberts District, but I'm not familiar with District 5. I'm very familiar with, obviously, with Rock Hill and very familiar with Fort Mill for some reasons. But it's important that these conversations are had so that the communication, when you're sitting up there and approving something where you do have a say, that you have the knowledge and you can make an informed decision of, oh my gosh, what are the people in Lake Wiley going to say if we approve these 200 homes? If we send a recommendation for a rezoning to county council, what are the people in Lake Wiley going to say? You know, and I put my life on the line for those people. I'm going to tell y'all right now, my life is on the line for Lake Wiley. And then you've got a municipality who, these municipalities have been hungry for a long time. They come before county council. Watch those council meetings sometimes. They come before county council, they got their hands out. And they're not giving, they're taking. And some take more than others. Some don't get much at all. Some get more than their fair share. And what it is a sign, those small municipalities, when somebody says Lake Wiley should incorporate, don't ever say it within an arm's length of me. Let me just say that. Because why do we want to be in line with those municipalities? And so I tell people, we're a whole lot better and a whole lot safer under the county umbrella. And I believe that. Because they need fire. They need services that the county provides for the county, and they're all begging. So what happens in these small municipalities, right, David Dressler, back there, is when somebody comes to them and they want to build 400 townhomes, or they want to build, you know, botch a whole neighborhood, those small towns are anxious to do that. This is why York has approved over half of their current population in new homes being built. It's why the York School District's got a problem. It's why Clover School District, what the history that I've given you of Lake Wiley, it's why the Clover School District has overfilled schools right now. And there's just no going back. So I have a real issue with the fact that somebody can come in, get a preliminary plat approved, go, I don't know how many, they can hold it for 10 years, go down the road and sell it to somebody else, and they've got their foot in the door. And they're not asked, well, they can hold it for 7 years for the same thing. But they've got the foot in the door, and they're not ever, you can't ask them, okay, can we get another traffic study? Can we update? So we've got some now that are coming that had all the ones that we've already approved been built. I don't think anybody in their right mind would have ever approved these additional ones. But that's where we are. So my plea is to be very familiar with the Lake Wiley overlay and do your best to uphold what we've worked as planning staff and residents of Lake Wiley, very many people are involved, to uphold what we feel like is the only way that we're not going to lose all of our ground. It's very important. It's critical. We are at a point of diminishing returns. That's it. That's my hope. Every time that I get an agenda for the Planning Commission, I look at it and I go, every time I get Josh Reinhardt's report, once a month, I go, oh my God, please don't be many number twos out in the right-hand column. And I look at it and I go, it's 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 2, 2, 2. And I mean, it's just horrific. And so we've worked hard. Those guys in planning, they've worked hard. They have helped me. They've helped the zoning committee. We've got things put in place, and It's just, your awareness is what's critical to how we live the rest of our lives in a little bottleneck of York County.
Thank you, Al.
Did I go over?
Yeah. For District 6, I look at the comp plan and laugh. I mean, it's residential up and down Sony's Highway. I mean, who in the right mind thinks that we need houses on Sony's Highway? That's the reason I've never cared for the comp plan. I'm never worried about what it says one way or the other. District 6, it doesn't really matter what my opinion's gonna be, because the city of Rock Hill is gonna annex 90% of whatever they want there anyway. It's too close to the city limits, city services, they're gonna bring it right in. Essentially going, and a third of District 6 is the city of Rock Hill. The county areas, whenever there has been something come up, it's always, to me, it's what does the community want at that time? And that's who I'm fighting for. So I've never, and this isn't, me and Matt have had many discussions, and I think we share a lot of the same views on issues. So it's been helpful to me to know that I've got somebody there on the planning commission. And I'm grateful for that, to at least know exactly the way I feel about things. But ultimately, to me, it comes down to what the citizens want. I don't want government to stand in the way of what the citizens want, period. So, and I think Lake Wiley should incorporate.
Well, why don't you bring that up?
I had to say it just because I'm sitting right here.
I'm gonna let you go.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm gonna use my 30 seconds well. No, first of all, I wanna thank each and every one of you, because what's important here is that you are understanding our districts. And it's because not every shoe, not one shoe fits all. And as I mentioned earlier, in my district, we experience heavy growth. I mean, being on the school board for 8 years, I saw 1,000 new students coming on our district. And the impact on capital expenditures was excruciating. And again, that's critical that y'all have done that. And I appreciate that, so thank you, I appreciate it. The other point I wanna make is that as we feel like in my district, I feel pressure coming out of Charlotte, okay? When we do RFATS committee, we have challenges from Beyond Connect, where they come down here with a strategic plan to say, all right, we're gonna do this, but we're gonna try to incorporate it. So on the end game, we're gonna make y'all like something outside of Atlanta, and we've pushed back and we pulled out of some of those committees to stop it, to draw the line, because local control, local sovereignty is critical. When you've got forces from the outside trying to push their agendas on us, that affects everything, and it also, in fact, it will affect what kind of zone or what kind of asks are going to be pushed from the zoning perspective. So the takeaways I got tonight, I think that a staff to zoning fast track plan should be put in place. I think that what I mean by that is that if staff does see something that can be brought back to zoning that they can quickly act on before it comes to y'all, I think that's huge. Because again, that's gonna help to shield or protect y'all from the things that you can't affect, and bring back be able to make a better decision, because you're not blocked by something that's causing a problem for y'all. So again, it won't help everything, but I think it's a good plan to move forward with. And the last thing I wanna mention is that I think we always continue to learn. Each of the districts are going to learn from what our experiences, and I know Robert's district will learn from what our district's been through. I think as we move forward as a body, our communication is critical. Having these meetings are critical, and I want to thank you all for everything you do. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So my comments are going to be, I think they apply across the board to the county as well as to District 5. District 5 has changed a good bit with the redistricting. We're now below the river. No more, we don't have any more Fort Mill inside of our district. It's a lot of still farmland and vacant land, so I see areas of tremendous growth. There's three things that I see and that I would ask for. First is, I think we want to have a reputation as a county of protecting neighborhoods, having quality neighborhoods, and having quality business in the right place. So comp plan is really critical to me. I would ask you to pay close attention to that and make sure that the areas that have been designated, that you ask the questions and that they're in the right places. Because that's how we protect the neighborhoods, and is to make sure that there's no noxious business beside them. That would be the reputation that I think York County would want to have. That's certainly what I would want my district to have. Number two, respecting the areas. York County's huge, it's big, it's growing fast. The folks who live in the districts, who are the district representatives, they're gonna know a little bit more about what it is, so respecting that area, and I think our council has worked very hard. We look at things countywide, but we also, defer a lot to that person, because I'm the one who holds the bag when the people come and say, I'm the one that's gonna hold it when the people in the community don't like what's being approved. Whether I've approved it, or you did, or ZBA, at the end of the day, I think at least respecting that area, and respecting the district member is critically important. I wrote down third, and now I can't even read my own writing, but I think that the biggest thing for me is making sure that we start this dialogue, open it up, and that we hear from you all, because we are gonna have some things that come up that we're not prepared for, one of the things that I see, especially in District 5, is an automatic change from AGC to RUD. It sounds innocuous, but it's not. It needs to be a transition, because if you put a pocket somewhere, then it opens that up. And having something different between a 1-to-1 and a 5-acre lot is something that I think we ought to start working towards, especially for the small builders. And so that's kind of my piece. And I'm gonna give you guys a chance too to say anything you want to say to us if you want to do that. I think, the first time you open up this dialogue, it's a lot to get out, and I'm happy to do that. Hopefully the next one we have in spring will be, even better.
So I have a question. So what is their route to us? Like if they, so I don't think that we wait a year or till spring to hear from them. How do we?
I think the first route is, does anybody want to speak tonight about anything that you want council to hear about? I don't want to make you feel like you have to say something, but if you want to, you're more than welcome to.
I've got a few things.
Okay. I want to make sure you
Always
get
have
your
something to
chance.
say.
No,
Okay.
really?
Okay, so Robert actually stole some of my thunder. I was right in with what you said about the comprehensive plan. I like to hear what you said because it's a plan. And I think that for me, I don't know about you guys, but the comprehensive plan has always seemed to be a bit of a burden, or it's like I'm nervous when I go, oh, okay, it's not in the comprehensive plan, so we can't, change rezoning, or they've got a problem. They've got a problem because it's not in the comprehensive plan. So what do we do about that? I don't know what to do about that, other than agree to disagree.
You
So
could
I
run for
don't-
council.
Do what?
You could run for council.
Yeah, you should
Yeah.
run for council.
Yeah, okay. For District 7.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm kind of wearing two hats. And the thing that worries me about that is that it's a comprehensive plan for 2035, through 2035. And oh my gosh, did we even know back that we were gonna have this explosion in Fort Mill? Did anybody know that? I mean, was that like on the radar screen that it was gonna explode like it has exploded? I mean, when we moved there, we were so proud of ourselves because we said we live in the best little area, it's the best secret. And don't tell anybody because it's a secret and it's so good. Secret got out. So 13 years, 2035 is 2022. What's going to happen in 13 years? We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, look what has happened. And I mean, how much, I guess I'm saying all this because it worries me. I'm kind of like with Brandon, it's kind of a love-hate relationship. How dedicated do we have to be to that comprehensive plan? Can there be some flexibility with things that the economy, we don't know what's going to happen to the economy. Maybe all building's going to stop, who knows? But in our area, we need for it to slow down. we need that business development. That's what we've tried to work toward. And we need 55 and over situations, which last night we had a little deal happen for you. And I think that's a plus, but that's where I'm at.
Can I make one comment? So as we are impacted by many things, state law can really impact us. So when we look at Act 388 and the impacts of Act 388 in our state, it's been immense. And that was a big driver for driving this growth. So I think, as we work with our state legislators, we really got to be conscious of that overall long-term impact on some of these bills. And again, Act 388 is a prime example of a bill that
it is.
impacted us immensely
Right.
from a residential growth perspective.
Right, right.
Thank you, Debbie. I don't want to put pressure on anybody to say anything, because we're at 7:10. If you want to, please.
I've got some more stuff, but I yacked a lot before.
Might as well go around the horn.
Go around the horn, okay. For me, the things that have come up in the short time I've been here is the flexibility versus the black and white. And the kind of things that where if we want to let a nickel store do what we think is the right thing for them to do, then we have to go so far in a way that we don't want to open that up, but we have no other choice. It's either we tell him no, or yes you can, but we've left a big door open for the future. I think the analogy of the speed limit is a good thing about the comprehensive plan and the future land use, but when we think about breaking the speed limit, when do you do that? You do that in an emergency situation, right? If you're having someone that's having a medical emergency and you speed to the hospital, I think you'd be hard pressed to have any law enforcement here give you a ticket for speeding when you were trying to save someone's life. But when you're doing it just because that's what you want to do, that's when they want to hand you the ticket. I would change that analogy in that I think the comprehensive plan and the future land map is the GPS route that we've selected to get from point A to point B. But as we go down that route and we hit a roadblock, we can't just sit there and wait until the roadblock's cleared. We have to think about how are we going to navigate around this particular thing to keep heading in our final destination. So I think to the extent we lock that in our minds that it's completely inflexible and we can't change it because once the plan's set, that's it, then we have to sit and wait for that roadblock. To the extent that we give ourselves some flexibility at whatever level, whether it's us, whether you all having the ultimate say of, hey, we're gonna do this, but you all come and say, nope, that doesn't join with what we wanna do, okay, but I think flexibility is key to get from point A to point B as the road conditions change. And the two big things that keep coming up for us and coming up for you all as well as some of the stuff that I've seen is traffic in schools. When this happens, what's it gonna do to traffic? What's it gonna do to our school system? And I think the more we can put that at the front end of what we decide here before it comes to you, makes it a much easier discussion for you to have with whoever might be seeking development and seeking your support of development to say, well, that's all great, but the first two hurdles we've got to look at are these two things that really impact our residents, and we want to make sure those are addressed before we talk about another 300 homes going in here, which is a great idea, but how are we going to deal with these other two things that are ancillary results of that? And
that could be done through a quick calculation, right?
that could be done through all kinds of quick things. I'm not trying to promote a methodology, I'm saying that I think
But that just
before
gotta
it
be-
came to us, it shouldn't be, well, you've got a plat, here's your stamp. Before it came to us, it should be, what are these 3 or 4 things that absolutely must be done and calculated to a point to say, that meets the threshold to keep moving forward, based on how we all want the community to look.
Can I interrupt for just 1 second? For Michael Kendrick.
Yes.
Oh, so one of the things that the planning commission recommended, they had 11 or 12 things. So one of those was concurrency, and council did approve for us to hire a consultant to look at concurrency, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing at this point, but what is our timeline? When will we hear from that, do you think?
I've placed it on the agenda a couple times, it just hasn't made it before council yet. A minute track.
As long,
I think-
David, I think what you said is that, I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but I think there's, you have to approve the cost for the expert. That's something you guys have to put forward, is to approve the cost of the expert to guide the concurrency planning discussion. That's what I heard last
We
time.
have a proposal, and it is ready for council to consider, but I wanted planning staff and legal and all of us to be on the same page before it came to you. So it wasn't scheduled for the agenda for Monday night, but I feel like we need to formulate a recommendation for council.
I think that's a priority. I mean, it's something that they asked for, it's been a while, something that I asked for at the council meeting and it got approved, so, I mean, I just think we need to get along with doggy on that.
Just one item that we talked about a while back, but nothing's ever really moved forward on is vested rights. There was something with how it was written, and it was gonna be pushed off till later because Recode was the focus on getting it done.
That was the state ordinance allows for you to deny a vested right if it is, I can't remember the exact word, detrimental to the public good and safety, something along those lines. But the county had not adopted that language, so we could not deny a vested right based on that, which came up with, I believe it's Maraway in Lake Wiley. 6 years ago, the traffic was not what it is now. So we actually denied the vested right, got the county sued, had to go to arbitration, which is the only way we can negotiate with developers at this point, is to get the county sued, which nobody likes. But because that is not in our county language, we could not fall back on the state language to deny it for those purposes. So we had requested that the county take that up and put it into our code so that that is something, if it is, and again, I can't remember the exact language, but
We wrote that down.
put that in there so that we can deny, if it is going to, because I mean, that's just gonna be a traffic nightmare. You have wrecks coming out of that YMCA, it's gonna be right next to it. There cannot be a light there. There's lights on either side of it, so. Yeah, there's a school there, there's a YMCA there, and it's bracketed by stoplights, so you can't put a light there. It's a disaster waiting to happen. No, I think I've said everything else already, so.
Yeah, I mean, the only other one that I have seen in the few years that I've been on the planning commission does come to do with the preliminary plats. And if we did have, whether it's some minor thresholds that must be met when they come forward, because I think as fast as York County is growing and as fast as York County will grow, I think it's an accelerating growth. It's not reaching a stasis point. We give too much to developers out of the gate. We give the negotiation, they are way over the line in our territory, in our county, and then we're having to claw things back from them for the good of our citizens, for the good of the quality of life. So we're allowing the letter of the law to let them do whatever they want, because they know that we won't deny it. We can't deny it. They'll just come up with a preliminary plat that meets zoning, we have to approve it, and there are no minimum requirements as related to school impact, traffic impact, services impact, infrastructure impact, that they have to meet before they get that rubber stamp of approval. I think if there were some negotiation capabilities with that, where they knew that, hey, if I go to that meeting, I might get pushback where the planning commission goes, yeah, no, try again. And they have to go back. I've been involved with a development that's now behind my house in the city of Rock Hill. Planning commission did just that. The original LGI development was 450, 460 homes. It's now about 330. And it was because they pushed back and told them, that's not gonna meet that area. You need to come back with something different. And if we had the ability from the planning commission side to say, here are some key thresholds, you've got all the traffic that's on this road, it's already meeting a service level of an F, you've got to do something different. then
100%.
we take it away from the developer. I see it as our citizens, us, we are our own customers, but our citizens are our customers. The quality of life that they have is what we are here to protect. People move here for the quality of life, and if we allow developers to do whatever, they're just looking for the quality of money
Exactly.
and going home. Once they sell that house, they don't care. And I know that for a fact because sitting in some of those, I was on the citizen committee negotiating with LGI, and that the only comment from an LGI executive in that meeting was, how many homes per acre? He didn't care. That was the only question he wanted answered. And he wanted to be as many as he could get. So that's what I would ask for, is some way to set some base parameters in negotiation with the developer up front. Then I think they would come with something a little more beneficial to the citizens of the county out of the gate.
I think one of the things with that and why the comp plan is so important, especially from a county perspective, is making sure that you give yourselves a guidepost. I mean, not to increase the density so that they don't have that argument. I mean, obviously they have existing rights that you can't, you can't deal with. You have to, by right property rights. But I think that's why the comp plan is so important. But I've written that down.
I won't repeat everything everybody else said. I
Thank
concur
you.
with them. But the only thing that I would like to see as far as a takeaway, this was good. I've been on the planning commission now for over 18 months. I don't recall us having this kind of dialogue before. So with county council. So I would like to have this dialogue again, just more than once.
Sounds good. I think that's definitely our goal, is to open the doors of communication. And Allison asked the question, what is the path from you all to us? And I think that's a valid point. I think we wanted to make sure that each of you had an opportunity to give your comments, and then I think the way that you talk to us, and Michael Kendry, you're gonna have to guide us a little bit here. We're always told that we're supposed to keep a level of separation, because you're never supposed to feel like that we're dictating to you. You're an independent board, and so we've always been told, the independent communications are an issue. But anytime, if you want council to hear comments that you have on a specific issue that comes before us, whether it's a rezoning that makes its way to us, I think making sure that you put your comments in there and letting staff know, especially if it's a majority of you, that you want that highlighted in the agenda, that's important. I think that's one way to communicate with us. Another way is for us to have this more regularly, and I do think that the next time we will do this will be in the spring. That's probably the best time to be doing these meetings anyway, but I'm glad that you think this is productive. I think it certainly opens a door of communication, puts us in line with what other folks are doing. And I remember my third point, and my third point was, please help us not to repeat the sins of the past. That's why the comp plan is very important. Allison spoke very passionately about, we've got too many people here, too fast right now. Learn from this, and help us learn from this as we go into the other areas that have not reached that yet.
And Michael, could I ask, because I think the way I've always understood it is, if they have a issue that they're seeing repeatedly or whatever, they can reach out to us as their council member, because they are in our district, whoever we've appointed, if they, and say, hey, listen, I'm seeing this. What we can't do is say, hey, next Monday night, you've got this coming before you, and I think this is what you need to do, or this is what I think about that. We can't discuss something beforehand, but once they voted and done,
Yes.
if they have a concern about something, they can always come to us afterwards and raise that concern, correct?
Correct. A dialogue on a pending matter before the body would be inappropriate.
Very good.
Call me anytime.
Thank y'all. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
so we're concerned about our friend down south and his golf carts. He's gonna come to y'all.
I think I made the right call on that. Thank you. I know that there was an executive session. Do we need that?
Yep.
Okay. Let's do this. Do we have a motion for executive session to receive? If you leave, we don't have it.
Well, I'm not leaving, I'm just trying to figure out, I don't know what it is. 'Cause there's nothing-
there's nothing.
I think all we're doing is getting information and getting a status update of things I think you heard at the conference related to water and sewer and contractual issues that are confidential.
So I move we go into executive session to hear regarding, to hear an update regarding contractual matter on water and sewer issue.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move into executive session. We'll take 5 minutes to say.
I'm not going anywhere.
Bring Bernie down to the world things. I gotta get this.
I'm ready to go.